Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. You are now listening to the right side, coming to, and I'm your host, Jeff Doggett, coming to you on the greatest station in the nation from the greatest location in the nation. Shout out to everybody listening to us as far north as Kennebunkport, Maine, as far south as Key West, Florida, as far east as Staten Island, New York, and as far west as Stockton, California, and all the points in between. For those of you that are listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone that you are in. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases like COVID-19. Number one, wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Now, if you do not know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself, and when you've completed that song, you've completed 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. I understand that's common sense, but we all know that the least common thing these days is common sense. Number three, wipe down frequently touched objects and items with some type of disinfectant. And then you also may want to mix in some hand sanitizer in your vehicle so that when you go to the gas station and pump gas, that you will have something to sanitize your hands with afterwards, since you do not know who handled that pump prior to you handling it. Number four, stay at home when you are sick and stay away from people who are sick. That job that you just think cannot go on without you being there, I've got news for you. Guess what? It will go on. Also, too, when you are in an enclosed area like a church or an arena or concert hall or a shopping mall or movie theater or playhouse, whatever the case may be, still wear your mask, and if it's possible, continue to social distance from those who are around you. This pandemic is not over yet, folks. In fact, it has morphed from a pandemic into an endemic. So please take the necessary precautionary steps so that you won't get sick with COVID-19 or any other respiratory disease for that matter. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Powered by Google and sponsored to you and sponsored for you rather, brought to you by Lamont Avenue Wines. If you are in the Cleveland area on the first or third Saturday of each month, I have some outstanding news for you. Well, you missed it today because it's over, so you're going to have to then wait now to the 17th of this month to do so and take advantage of it. And what is it that you're talking about, Jeff? What is it that we can take advantage of? Well, what you can take advantage of is this, is that 6812 Woodland Avenue right here in Cleveland, Ohio, the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, along with Major Care Ministries and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, who houses this event, has a great thing going on. From 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., they are giving away free groceries every first and third Saturday at 6812 Woodland Avenue. You get a free bag of groceries. Now listen, you do not have to show proof of residence. You do not have to show proof of income. The only thing you have to show is up, and that you show up, and you will receive the free bag of groceries, no questions asked. Now, it doesn't stop there, though, folks. No, it continues to get even better. Because in addition to receiving the free bag of groceries, you also get free clothing for both adults and children. So if you have children with you, or if you have children at home, not only will you get the free bag of groceries, but you will also get free clothing for yourself and also the children. But listen, it doesn't stop there either, because if you are there from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., guess what you get in addition to all of that? That's right, you get a free hot lunch, a home-cooked hot lunch. So who says there's no such thing as a free lunch? Well, maybe other places, but not at 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, on the first and third Saturday of each month. You get a free hot lunch. So listen, you get a free bag of groceries. You get free clothing for both yourself as an adult and children, and you get a free hot lunch. So folks, you can't beat that. And when is this, you say? It's the first and third Saturday of each month. Where, you ask? At 6812 Woodland Avenue, right here in the beautiful city of Cleveland, Ohio. So please take advantage of this. It is great and it's an awesome thing. Good to be back live on the air. Been off live the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was out of town in Maryland. I want to thank Courtney Mosley and Brian D. Seegers once again for co-hosting. I know they did an outstanding job, so kudos to them and applause to them. I'm sure you all enjoyed them. If you didn't, something's wrong with you, not wrong with them, because they're just fantastic. And last week, because it was a holiday, we did a best of show, so we repeated one of those shows. So we're back here on the air live.
You will.
And we're so thankful for Marie for putting that out for us last week. And we're back here on the air live today. And we will be here. And then, of course, we know that the end of the month will be the holiday season again. So we have an abbreviated month. But we're going to plow forward anyway. For those of you that are new to this show, this is what we do. We talk politics, we talk sports, I throw out some topics, I give my take on those topics, and then we invite you to call with your take on said topics at 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. That number is good across the world. There is no toll-free number, but most of you are dialing on cell phones anyway, so it's not really a toll for you to call this number if you're outside of the 216 area code. So today, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the fact that Kanye West, or Ye as he calls himself, is in desperate need of a history lesson. We're going to tell you why we believe that he's in desperate need of a history lesson and give our take on that. We're also going to talk about, even though now it appears as though they are going to make the college football playoffs, but we're going to give our opinion on as to why we think Ohio State does not deserve to make the CFP playoffs, college football playoffs, for those who do not know what the CFP is. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to do a preview of the upcoming Georgia runoff elections for the Senate seat, which is this Tuesday, between incumbent Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's a Democratic candidate, and his Republican opponent, former NFL player and Heisman Trophy winner Herschel Walker. So we're going to weigh in on that as well.
Him and his mom need a history lesson too.
Yeah, they do. They do. He needs a whole lot of lessons about a lot of stuff.
Therapist.
But so those are our topics. If you have something else on your mind that you want to talk about, you can feel free to talk about that as well at 216-939-5087. The Nazi Party was, and to this day, because they still exist, but at their founding in Germany in the 1920s, was based on, in principle, on some very racist, some very hateful and heinous policies. They believed in the total extermination of the Jews. They believed that anybody that was not a white person of Aryan background was inferior and therefore subjugated to be servants to said white Aryans. So, for example, Slavic people in places like Poland and Russia were looked at as subhuman. Black people and people of color throughout the world were looked upon as subhuman, and as we said, so were Jews, and they looked upon these races of people either to be enslaved, exterminated, or both. This founding principle was based upon their beliefs, as we said, that the misbelief of Aryan superiority, and that white Aryans were made to rule the world and to subjugate those who were not white Aryans, as we said, to slavery, servanthood, or extermination. Of course, they reached the peak of their power in the 1930s in Germany, where the Nazi Party took over the German government and ruled the German government from 1933 to 1945. Of course, their supreme leader was Adolf Hitler, who they gave the title Der Führer, which means the leader, and he communicated their racist, heinous ideologues and policies, which resulted in, at least up to this time, the most destructive war in the history of mankind, and that's World War II, where close to 100 million people lost their lives across the world during World War II, including the attempt of genocide of European Jews, where 6 million European Jews were exterminated through various means, through gas chambers, through carbon monoxide poisoning, through mass shootings, through just horrible medical experiments, and etc. And for the most part, the Nazis and Nazi ideology and Adolf Hitler were regarded, and still are regarded, as pariahs throughout the world. So I just give you that background and that backdrop, that brief historical backdrop, to bring it up to today. And our first topic that we want to talk about, the reason why I brought that up, is that obviously Kanye West, or Ye as he calls himself, either does not know the history or is willfully ignorant of the history, but whatever the case may be, he needs to be brought up to speed with a history lesson as to exactly what the Nazi Party was about and still is about today. Now, for those of you that are wondering why I'm talking about this, Kanye West was on Thursday, was on the right-wing podcast, the media podcast of Alex Jones, who we've talked about on this show before. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about the ruling that was handed down in civil court, where basically he was commanded to pay to the survivors of Sandy Hook victims well over many millions of dollars in reparations because of his spreading of misinformation that the whole Sandy Hook event was a false flag that never really occurred, that it was stage actors and what have you, and so therefore those who follow him committed heinous acts such as urinating on the grave of one of the victims, for example, of the Sandy Hook slayings. And so he has this program called InfoWars. It's a right-wing conspiracy, and I don't want to give it too much oxygen, but just so that we have the facts here and have the information. It's a right-wing conspiracy podcast, if you will, called InfoWars. And on Thursday, Alex Jones had Ye, a.k.a. Kanye West, and Nick Fuentes, who is a Holocaust denier, an anti-Semite, and also a white nationalist. he had these two on his program. And Kanye West made the following statements, and this is why we are saying that this man is in desperate need of a history lesson given the fact of what the Nazi Party was founded upon. And Kanye West said the following things. He said, and I quote, that he said that every human being has some some good things, I should say, some good things about them. All right. He says that every human being has some value, to quote him correctly. He says that every human being has value and that they need to bring it to the table, and that every human being has value, and especially Adolf Hitler. Said that Adolf Hitler had a lot of value. Also said that Adolf Hitler did a lot of good things, and that basically that people need to stop hating on the Nazis. That so when Alex Jones even said, well, now Alex Jones, you figure it takes a lot, given his background, if you will, takes a lot to shock him, so to speak. And even Alex Jones tried to push back on Kanye when Kanye made these statements saying that the Nazis did a lot of really horrible things. And Kanye's retort to that was, but they did a lot of good things too. So let's look at the list here. What are the good things they did? Let's see. They overthrew a legitimate elected government when Adolf Hitler became chancellor in 1933. They banned all other political parties in Germany at the time. They passed what they call the Nuremberg Laws in 1935, which basically stripped German Jewish citizens of their citizenship. They set up concentration camps throughout Germany in the early 30s, where their political opponents were sent to work hard labor, and to also some were even killed in these. I'm talking about pre-World War II. They perpetrated what was known as the big lie. As a matter of fact, that was part of their policy, that their propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, said, and I quote, that if you tell a lie that's big enough and you tell it enough, that people will begin to believe it. They started the Second World War by invading Poland, a sovereign nation, even though, and as history has proven, that England and France shouldn't have done this, that they capitulated to the Nazi demands. And even though Hitler had promised after the agreement of 1938 that once that Czechoslovakia was basically ceded over to Germany, that he would have any more territorial demands. He had already annexed Austria, basically took over a sovereign nation, Czechoslovakia, who had no say-so in that. And despite making the promise, in 1939 he signed a non-aggression pact with his mortal enemy, Joseph Stalin, who ruled communist Russia at that time, and they basically divided up Poland. So they invade Poland in 1939, setting off World War II. In that war, not only was it a war of mass destruction, but it was also a war of genocide, as under the Nazis. Remember, these are the people that Kanye said did a lot of good things. Under the Nazis, they set up death camps throughout occupied Poland, at Majdanek, at Sobibor, at Treblinka, at Kelmo, at Auschwitz, not to mention Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia, not to mention Dachau and Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank was sent, and also Buchenwald in Germany. where Jews and enemies of the Nazi state were sent to be worked to death, starved to death, or gassed in gas chambers as soon as they got off the trains that transported them there. Not to mention the fact that the Jews of occupied Europe were placed into what they called ghettos in large cities in Poland like Warsaw and Lublin, and also in occupied Russia, in Vilnius and Lithuania, in the Ukraine and Kiev for the purposes of mass extermination. How the Nazis, again, I'm just giving you all of this because Kanye said they did a lot of good, had death squads that followed the German soldiers, followed behind the German soldiers that went around and summarily executed primarily Jewish people, but also influential political figures in these occupied countries. Practiced genocide, set up mass killing centers, started World War II, the most destructive war in human history. And so I'm looking at all of these things, and I'm trying to see the good things that they supposedly did. Because this is what Ye said on Alex Jones' show the other day. What he does not, and so we know the history. I'm pretty sure if you even just have a rudimentary knowledge of history, especially World War II history and what have you, I've not told you anything that's new to you, and if it is, you need to go and do some more research on it so that you can get the full scope of it. That's not the purpose of this show, for me to give you a full scope of the history of the genocide that was practiced by the Nazis from 1933 to the end of the war, World War II in 1945. You can look that up on your own.
Yep.
However, the reason that I'm bringing this up, and the reason that I say that Kanye, or Ye, as he wants to call himself, is in dire need of a history lesson, is that one of the proponents of Nazism, just, other than, of course, and I'm not overlooking this by a long shot, I'm not trying to minimize this, other than the fact, of course, that they wanted to wipe out Judaism, is that they looked at black people and people of color as inferior.
Yep.
So let's just do a revisionist history here, or what if. Thank God this didn't happen. What if Nazi Germany would have prevailed in World War II? What would have happened? Well, I'll tell you what would have happened. Kanye West, or Ye, as he wishes to be called, would not have been able to even make the statement that he did the other day on InfoWars, because Ye would not be around, because Ye and his more importantly, his ancestors that were alive here in the U.S. during the 40s, if Nazi Germany would have prevailed, they eventually would have been killed in some type of death camp. So Ye would not even be around today to make these ridiculous, anti-Semitic, and just crazy statements. He even said that I am a Nazi. He identifies with being a Nazi. Says that, the Nazis did a lot of, he would say that even the Jews would agree that the Nazis did a lot of good things. Well, I don't think you'll find any Jewish person anywhere that would agree with you on that. Then, of course, he had a Twitter account. And the Twitter account he had got taken down. Now, of course, we know Elon Musk, and we know what he's about. Yet even Elon Musk, who has allowed all types of heinous things to come back on Twitter that once were banned and are not banned anymore, that people can use that forum for the hate speech that they used it for prior to his acquiring Twitter, and after people had been banned off of Twitter for some of the hate speech that they put out, are now welcome back on Twitter and allowed to propagate, if you will, their hate speech. But listen, folks, even Elon Musk took this down and suspended Kanye's Twitter feed. Now, we don't know how long it's going to be suspended for. This is not his first time offense, because he had tweeted out things prior to this most recent tweet, which I'm going to share with you in just a moment, which caused his account to get suspended. His account has been suspended before for saying heinous and crazy things. All right? Just so that you know. So anyway, he tweeted out on Twitter just the other day, I believe it was Thursday, when his account got shut down. He tweeted out the Star of David, which is the Star of David is a symbol of Judaism, symbol of Israel. It's what's on the Israeli flag. Now, despite what your feelings are about Israel, whether they have the right to exist as a sovereign nation and all that, I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just pointing this out just to show you the lengths that he's gone to promote this hatred. Kanye tweeted out the Star of David, and he superimposed a swastika over the Star of David in his tweet. And this is what got his account suspended. Again, this is a man who professes a love for Adolf Hitler. This is a man who said out of his own mouth that he is a Nazi, that people need to stop dissing the Nazis because they did a lot of good things, and that every human being has their worth, and especially Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler is the most hated man. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Adolf Hitler is the most hated man in human history right now. I don't think there's anybody that tops out. When you hear the name Hitler and you think about him, you don't think about worth. You don't think about someone who supposedly did some good things, because there weren't. All right? Yeah, he put Germany back to work during the Depression and helped the German economy and what have you, but you don't associate Adolf Hitler with the good. The only thing that any sane, rational, non-Nazi, non-white supremacist, non-white nationalist, non-neo-Nazi associates Adolf Hitler with is with evil. Adolf Hitler was without a doubt the embodiment of evil. And yet Ye says that he had a lot of work, that he did a lot of good things, that Nazis, we need to quote, stop dissing Nazis, unquote. So this is why Ye is in desperate need of a history lesson, because what Ye does not realize, or maybe he's so delusional that he just refuses to realize, is this: is if Nazi Germany would have prevailed in World War II, he would either A, not be here now because his ancestors that brought him here would not have been alive to do so, or if he were, he would be subject to slave labor right now, based solely on the color of his skin, based solely upon the fact that Nazi ideology will look upon him and people of color as what they say in German, the Untermensch, which means subhuman. So this man that you admire, Ye, this party and this ideology and this thought process that you say needs to stop being this, that did so many good things and what have you, that same ideology and philosophies and what have you that you admire, that you put up on the pedestal, if you will, that you have tweeted out vile tweets about and made vile statements about, would have killed you. Would have killed your grandparents so that your parents would have never been born. Or if your grandparents would have been able to be alive to produce your parents, they would have, along with you, would have been subject to slave labor, to inhumane medical experiments, and to genocide. That is the philosophy. I don't say is because there's a lot of neo-Nazism that is around today. The philosophy of Nazism is genocide of those who they consider subhuman. And you know what, Ye? You fall into that category. You fall into the category of the subhuman because of the color of your skin. You fall into that category of the inferior because of the color of your skin. You fall into the category of those who were meant to be a servant to the inferior, to the supermen and women, if you will. To have genocide committed upon you. That if Adolf Hitler was alive today, would not embrace you, would totally reject you. That his Nazi minions that he had would take pleasure in putting you to death. You need to study your history, Ye. Because if you knew your history, you would not make statements like this. You don't even have to go back as far as the 30s and 40s. Just look at the effect of neo-Nazism and white supremacy and white nationalism right here in the country that you reside in, the good old USA. Those philosophies that are perpetrated by the 3%ers and the Proud Boys, the Wolverine militia, if you will, those organizations that do that, guess where they get that from? They get that from Adolf Hitler. Those people that want to subjugate you and to make you less of a citizen, they get that from the person and the group of people who you say should not be dissed. That's where they get this from. These are people that are trying to, that if they had their way, they would not hesitate killing you, subjugating you, making you a second-class citizen. They hate your mulatto child, for example. Think they were crazy about you and your mixed marriage with Kim Kardashian? And you know why? Because they do not believe in, quote, the mixing of the races, unquote.
Mm.
So let it hit home, yay. Your daughter, I think her name is North. Why you all named the child? Anyway, I'm not even going to get into that. They hate your daughter. They hate your daughter. They hate the fact that she was the offspring of what they call race mixing. And they look at her as the bastardization, if you will, of the races. Yet you say that they did a lot of good things and that they shouldn't be dissed and that you're a Nazi, you embrace that ideology. Well, if you really and truly embrace that ideology, then you need to disown your daughter because she doesn't fit into the mold. Do your homework. Well, we know that he's not going to do that. He has his issues, but I just wanted to bring that out. Just wanted to point that out to you all that those, and we know this is a cliche, but it's meant to be said. Those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. And there are a lot of people out here today that are ignorant to the fact of what really happened. What Nazi ideology is, I won't say was, because it's still active today. What Nazi ideology is all about. It's rooted in the same ideology of the Klan. It's rooted in the same ideology of white supremacy and white nationalism in this country and throughout the world. Here's a good example, Ye. You know where that you want to see a manifestation of that ideology right here in the United States? Go back to May of this year at a Tops supermarket store in Buffalo, New York. Peyton Gendron, who was the mass shooter who walked into that Tops supermarket on the Buffalo East Side, the predominantly black Buffalo East Side, and chose the day and time he did because after doing study, he realized that the highest amount of people, black people, that were at that grocery store were on Saturday afternoon. And he was fueled, yay, by this same ideology, this same thinking, if you will, that you say you embrace, that shouldn't be dissed. He was fueled by that, and guess what he did? You know what he did. He went in there and he gunned down 14 people. Because the ideology that he embraced told him that these people were subhuman anyway. And that because they are part of the inferior race, and he's part of the superior race, then he had by all means and all rights to go into that store and gun those people down. Do you think Hitler would have disapproved of that, Yay?
Hmm.
No. Hitler would have given him a medal for it. Yet you say they did a lot of good things. And that they, quote, stop, quote, dissing the Nazis, unquote. Now, we realize that allegedly Ye has mental issues. Although, you know what, I hear this all the time about him, but I've yet to see any mental health people come out saying that they diagnosed him or they treated him. He stated it, but there has been, to my knowledge, there have been no mental health officials no so-called experts in the field of mental health come out and say that he has mental illness issues. So, you know what? Maybe he doesn't. Here's the other thing, as an offshoot of that. On that program, InfoWars with Ye that day was Nick Fuentes. Now, Nick Fuentes is 24 years old. He's an avowed anti-Semite, an avowed white nationalist. And Ye took him to dinner with him when they had an audience with former President Donald Trump, who claimed that he did not know what Nick Fuentes' background was when he came to dinner with Ye. Okay, let's look at this, folks. Somebody coming to my house who comes to dinner with a friend of mine, which shows you right there Kanye and Donald Trump's relationship, but that's neither here nor there right now. But someone who would come to my house with a friend of mine who I invited to dinner, and they say, I'm bringing such and such with me. The first thing I'm going to ask is, what kind of person is this that is coming into my house? I'm not just going to have somebody come in my house sight unseen that I know nothing about. All right? That's me. Let's ratchet that up, say $1.5 million. Don't you think that a former president who is now and when this dinner was held, was a declared candidate for president in 2024, don't you think that his people would vet anybody who was coming in to have a sit-down dinner with just him and one other person? Don't you think that that would happen? So if they didn't vet Nick Fuentes, because when Donald Trump caught flack from it, of course, what he did is he blamed Kanye, saying that, he brought this guy in here who I never heard of before, who I did not know. Notice, though, what he didn't do, folks. He didn't condemn him. He didn't disavow himself from it. The only thing he did was try to deflect the blame from himself onto Ye. He didn't say, I condemn what Nick Fuentes stands for. His white supremacy, his white nationalism, and his anti-Semitism, which is well known. He didn't say that. The only thing he talked about was, I didn't know this guy, and I never heard of him before, and Kanye brought him in. But he never, folks, if you listen with your third ear, he never ever condemned the things that Nick Fuentes has said and stood for in the past. He didn't do that. Not only did he not do it, but wannabe Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, didn't do it either. His only comment was that, President Trump didn't know who this guy was. But he didn't condemn, which, listen, folks, as I said, there's no way that you can get me to believe that the handlers of a presidential candidate and former president of the United States are going to let some unknown person, allegedly unknown person, come in and have dinner with the president and one other person and not do any background check on this person at all. I was born at night, but not last night. So of course he knew. Thought he could get away with it. And, to his credit, Mitch McConnell and others in the Republican Party Mitt Romney to as one, for example, did speak out and condemn this. But the silence from others within the party is deafening. So much to the point that yesterday President Biden came out and said, and this is true what he said. President Biden came out yesterday and said that silence is complicity. Meaning that if you cannot condemn someone, and in this case, we're not talking about Kanye here, we're talking about this Nick Fuentes guy who allegedly Trump didn't know. But allegedly, no one vetted him either. Allegedly, if you want to believe that. You do believe that if one of your teeth come out tonight, put it under your pillow, and the tooth fairy will come and put some money under your pillow too, if you want to believe fairy tales. Now, one of these so-called Republican leaders came out and said anything. Do we have a caller?
No.
So this silence is complicit. And you know why they're silent, folks? This is why they're silent. Because there is a percentage of their voting base that supports and thinks the same way that Ye and Nick Fuentes do. And they're remaining silent because they don't want to say or do anything to tick off that part of the base. Those are the facts. You disagree with that, you can call in 216-939-5087. I'll give you the floor. Prove me wrong with what I just said. Again, they are silent about it. Didn't hear Marjorie Taylor Greene say anything. Matter of fact, Marjorie Taylor Greene stood with Nick Fuentes and other white supremacists at a conference earlier this year. Then she claimed that she didn't know who it was or what they stood for. You need Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert, Jim Jordan, Ron Johnson. You didn't hear any of them say anything. So I agree with you, Mr. President. Silence is the sign of complicity. So there we have it. So just so Kanye, if you're listening, which I know you're probably not, but anybody who knows him or is close to him that may be listening, just give him this history lesson for me, please. The Nazis that you admire, the Nazis that you embrace, their ideology that you embrace and says should not be this would have put you in the grave. Would have put your daughter in the grave. Would look upon her, as I said, as a bastardization of the races. They hate race mixing. So think about that. You really love your daughter? Then how can you love your daughter and still embrace something that would kill her? Because that's what they would want to do. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. My, the time just flew by in this first hour here. We're near the top of the hour here, so we're going to take a short break and come back at you in the next hour. The next hour, we can continue this discussion. We're also going to talk about why, despite what happened last night, and this is going to shock some of you because you all know where I stand, how I feel, how of a proud alum of Ohio State I am, bleed scarlet and gray, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to come back and talk about how we believe that despite what happened last night, and despite what might even be happening today with TCU, because the last I checked, they were trailing in their game too, 21-17 in the Big 12 championship game. But it's our belief that Ohio State, even though they now will, in all likelihood, make the Final Four of the college football playoffs, why we feel they really don't deserve to be there. So I'm sure that if this topic on Kanye didn't wake you up, this will wake some of you up, I'm sure, and you'll have some comments on it. So we'll be right back at you after these songs and these messages here on No Static Radio.
Has violence happened to you or your family? Violence can affect all parts of your life, sometimes in ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep, it causes you to lose focus, for angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting and you can change your life, starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, don't let violence control you. You can break free and TRC can help. Give them a call. And if you're listening and if you're watching, the numbers on the screen, 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They're free, they're 24/7, and they're confidential. So look, if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today and get the help you need today. If you call now, they will respond in minutes. Again, the number is 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. So normally here at No Static Radio, we do our History 365, and you know what? Nothing changes. Nothing changes from it. Today, though, we're gonna, bring you a little more current in our history. And today, since the AMAs don't want to do it, we here at No Static Radio will. We like to play salute and homage and introduce the some and reintroduce the others. And if you don't know who this guy is, what planet are you living on? Michael Joseph Jackson. Born August 29th, 1958, and left this earth on June 25th, 2009 at the age of 50. Where do we begin? He's an American singer, songwriter, dancer, philanthropist. He's dubbed the King of Pop. He's regarded as one of the most significant cultural figures in the 20th century. Over a 4-decade career, his contributions to music, dance, and fashion, along with his publicized personal life, made him a global figure and popular icon. Jackson's influenced artists across many music genres through stage and video performances. He's popularized complicated dance moves such as the moonwalk, to which he gave a name, as well as the robot. He's one of the most awarded musicians in history. At the age of 8, the Jackson family, being the eighth child of the Jackson family, Jackson made his professional debut, let me put it like that, in 1964 with his older brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon, as a member of the Jackson 5, later known as the Jacksons, once Randy was included. He began his solo career in 1971 while at Motown Records. He became a solo star in 1979 with the album Off the Wall, which took everything to the next level. His music videos include Beat It, from the album Thriller, and Billie Jean. From this 1982 album, Thriller, are credited, let me take that back, Thriller, Beat It, and Billie Jean are credited with breaking racial barriers and transforming the medium into an art form, a promotional tool. Look at that. He's helped propel the success of MTV and continue to innovate with videos from the albums Bad, Dangerous, History, Past, Present, Future, Book 1, Invincible. Thriller became the best-selling album of all time, while Bad was the first album to produce 5 U.S. Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles. Yeah, so from the late 80s, Jackson became a figure of controversy. And I'm not going to talk about that because, nothing came of it. But in 1983, he walked home with the most awards any artist has ever had in history. Wasn't it 8 Grammys? 8 Grammys, the most any artist has ever walked home with. So, look here. I say it every single week. GOOGLE, GOOGLE. If you want to know more about the King of Pop, or just brush over history, because what are we not familiar with when it comes to him? Google him. This is your girl, Decisive, here in No Static Radio on the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett. And now back to Jeff Doggett with the right side.
Thank you, Decisive. Thank you. And needless to say, the King of Pop, one of the greatest, if not the greatest entertainer that ever lived, is Michael Jackson. Thriller, 40th anniversary of that landmark album. I can still remember when the video first came out. I was working at a daycare center. And if you ever wanted the kids to just stop what they were doing, all you had to do is put the Thriller video on. And they stopped everything that they were doing. And just were mesmerized in front of the television set while that video played. So kudos to Michael Jackson, kudos to that video, and obviously the greatness of Michael Jackson is without doubt and speaks for itself. Here on the right side, I do reserve the right to change topics, if you will, in the middle of the stream. And I'm going to get to the topic I said, but I just want to share a little bit, a small amount of an article with you and give some feedback on it and throw this out here for discussion if someone wants to call in and talk about it. But the Ohio State legislature recently considering a bill that will allow poor readers to pass from the 3rd to the 4th grade. Now, there was thousands of children in Ohio who cannot read well enough to move to the 4th grade may soon get to move on anyway. That's right, they may soon get to move on anyway. Why is it that you ask? Is that the reason for that is that a bill has been introduced in the legislature in the state of Ohio that would no longer require 3rd graders to pass a reading proficiency test in order to move on to the 4th grade. The State Representative Phil Robinson, a Democrat, co-sponsored House Bill 497 with Republican State Representative Gail Manning. There's the emotional toll that it can have to hold kids back, said Robinson. Also, we know that kids who are held back are more likely to drop out of school or at least graduate from school. I'm sorry. The bill eliminates holding back children who do not pass 3rd grade reading proficiency. It is teaching children you're a failure and you're not good at reading, and it turns them off to reading, State Representative Gail Manning, Republican from Elyria, testified during a recent hearing. The bill passed in the House and has now moved to the Ohio Senate, where it will meet resistance from people like Representative Tom Brinkman, a Republican who opposed the bill in the House. They have to learn, I quote, this is what he's saying, they have to learn from their failures to move on, said Brinkman, a Republican from Claremont County. The worst thing we do with kids nowadays is we want to make sure they do not fail at anything, and then when they do have the hard rocks of life, they screw up and they can't cope with it. Brinkman points to the statistics that show students have improved in reading since the 3rd grade guarantee law went into effect in 2013. But other data shows improvement has been relatively flat. And Jamie O'Leary, an associate director at the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research at Ohio State University, says none of the data isolates the holding back or retention part of the law. Now, there's more to the article than that, but that's just the gist of it. Let me just weigh in on this. The one hand, children do need to be taught the realities of life, that that everybody doesn't get a trophy, that everybody doesn't get a ribbon for participation, and there are failures in life, and that the extent that you grow in life and are successful in life is measured about how well you are able to bounce back from your setbacks, bounce back from your failures. That I do believe that our youth need to be taught that there are some hard knocks in life, there are some valleys as well as mountaintops in life, and it's based on how you deal with the reality of being in the valley will then determine how successful you'll be able to navigate life. I get that. However, here's the main issue here as I see it. What's not being addressed here is why can't these children pass this third grade reading proficiency test? Why aren't they able to read it well enough and comprehend well enough on that level in order to pass the test? That's the real question here, not whether we're trying to teach a lesson or not as to whether a student should be able to be passed regardless of whether they pass the reading proficiency test at all. And hopefully they'll catch up and they'll make it up as they go along, but in most cases they probably don't. Once a child has difficulty reading and once they are showing a lack of proficiency in reading, that's very difficult to overcome. The question is not whether or not, at least how I see it, not whether or not the child should be passed or not passed based solely on how they perform on this reading proficiency test. The question is, why can't they pass? Why are the overwhelming and vast majority of students in the state of Ohio in the third grade, why are they not passing this test? Why is it not a 99.9% success rate? That's the question. And I don't know what the problem is. I know that we live now in the age of, the electronic age with so much with videos and cell phones and, text messages and TikTok and all the various social media forms and what have you. But I believe that the best way for children to learn how to read is that they need to start reading at a very early age. Just that they need to be taught reading and reading comprehension skills at a very early age. Now, I'm not saying that it's not being done because I don't know that for a fact that it's not being done. I don't know if it is being done. I'm under the assumption that at least in the schools it is being done. So the question is then, if it is being done, why are children having such difficulty? And I can only look back, and I realize that it's a different time now than when I was a child. But one of the things that I can remember as a youth growing up is the challenge of the summer reading club. What's the summer reading club, you ask? Well, in the neighborhood I grew up in, at the Cleveland Public Library, the Lee Harvard branch at that time was on Lee Road. And during the summer, there was a challenge that you will read so many books during your summer vacation time, and that each time you completed that book, you were to give a brief report at the library on that book. And once you completed, you got a star on the chart, and our competition was to see how many stars we can get. And I just believe that the more young people read, the better they will become at it, and the better their comprehension skills will be. But if young people don't read outside of school, if they don't go to the library, if they don't get books, if they don't challenge their mind by reading, then it's going to make it difficult, because if you don't do something, you can't become proficient at it. It's just, hello, I mean, does that make sense to anybody but me? The way you get proficient at something, the way you get good at doing something is by doing it. You get good at math by doing what? By working out problems. You get good at history by what? By reading and studying history. So it would just seem logical then that the way you develop your reading skills is that you read. Now, why then are not parents stressing reading amongst their youth? And I'm not saying all parents aren't doing this, but apparently there's a percentage-wise enough of parents that aren't doing this, which then underlies the fact that these children are not able to pass this proficiency exam, which means if they can't pass this reading proficiency test as the law is set up right now in the state of Ohio, and this is what this bill is dealing with, they cannot pass from the 3rd to the 4th grade, which then stigmatizes them, which then now puts them a year behind their classmates that were able to go forward, and could lead to problems down the road through dropout, through lack of interest in school, and all of the negative ramifications that come along with that. So I don't have the answers here. I've got some thoughts and some theories on this, but I do believe that it's incumbent, and I'm not saying parents aren't doing it because I don't know. I'm not in every household, but there's got to be a reason as to why these kids are not passing this proficiency exam, especially when they know it's coming. When you are in kindergarten, you know that in 3 years you're going to have to take this exam in order to pass from the 3rd to the 4th grade. Now, the argument can be made, should a proficiency exam carry that much weight? Should a proficiency exam override, if you will, what a child is doing in a classroom? And I get that part of the argument. Because what the child is doing in the classroom should take precedent over what a child does on a proficiency exam.
Absolutely.
I get it, and I'm not arguing that at all. But you've got to be able to read on certain grade levels in order not only to be successful academically in your academic career and your education career, even if it stops at the 12th grade, but you need that for a life skill as well. How many of you get contracts or get documents or what have you that you have to read these to get understanding from? And if you have poor or low comprehension skills, you're not really understanding what you're reading, and then now you're therefore now dependent upon someone else to interpret what it is that you're reading to give yourself so that you can get an understanding of it. Whereas if you have developed this skill, this reading and your comprehension skill, you're able to do that on your own for the most part. Now, there's some legal documents and what have you, that you do need lawyers to go over. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about basic things. I'm talking about when you are going to sign a contract. For example, when you go buy a car and you have to sign a contract or what have you when you're purchasing that car, you should be able to understand what it is you're reading so that you know what you're getting yourself into. That's all I'm saying. So I have some mixed feelings on this. I can see why there's this bipartisan co-sponsored bill that did pass the Ohio House. I do see the need for that, but I also have feelings that I don't want to see either, where reading is not emphasized and reading comprehension is not emphasized. Because if you cannot read or your comprehension skills are at a low level, you are primed to be taken advantage of. You're primed to be exploited you're primed to be in a certain social economic class. It just goes the more you can read, the more you can understand what you're reading, and the more you can apply what you're reading, the better off you will be in so many aspects and walks of your life. And the flip side, the other side of the coin is true as well. So your thoughts on that, 216-939-5087. That was something I was looking at during the break that came over across on Newsbreak, and I thought was very interesting. Wanted to share that with you all to get your input on that. I know some of you out here are listening. Give me a call. I know you have some thoughts on it. You just don't want to hear me pontificate on it the whole time. What are your thoughts on it? Am I being too alarmist here? Am I being too lax? Or what is the case here? Do you believe that students should be held back if they're not reading on a certain level? If they can't pass a reading proficiency exam? Or do you think that these exams are too weighted, and that a student should not be held back, that based on what they do in the classroom should determine whether or not they go on to the next grade? Now, I know, and again, I understand, I went to school back in the ancient times, so to speak. We didn't have these proficiency exams. I never took a proficiency exam until I took the SATs and the ACTs when it was time for me to go to college. So I get that. I never had to do it. I never had to take these types of exams. But and I have some feelings on those. I don't think they should be weighted as much, but I don't think that they're not necessary, because these are important. Do I think it should determine whether a child should be passed to the next grade or not? No, I don't. But I do think that what they do or how they score on this exam should be weighted so that, for example, if I'm doing well in the classroom and yet I do not do well on the reading proficiency exam, first of all, it should be determined, well, why didn't I? Am I not just a good test taker? Was that not just a good day? Or is there really an issue here? And then if there really is an issue here, then there should be some classes set up within the school, within that local school system, that local school district, that will help a student like me get to the proficiency level that I need to get to so that I can be successful in life. Because when a student gets to college, if you can't read or you don't understand what you read, your comprehension skill levels are low and your reading proficiency levels are low, you're not going to make it. It's simple as that. You're not going to make it, and then you're going to be frustrated and disillusioned, where at least you could have gotten the help that you needed back in elementary school. So I see a compromise here. I do not think students should be held back, but if the student cannot pass the proficiency exam, then there needs to be a whole new set of classes set up for students on those grade levels that will help them to develop their reading skills, their reading proficiency skills, their reading comprehension skills, so that by the time they get to middle school and high school, they will be reading on the level that they should be reading. Your thoughts, 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. Okay, I said at the beginning, at the end of last hour, that this hour I was going to talk about why I believe Ohio State does not deserve to be in the college football playoff. Now, as you know, if you're a regular listener to this show, you know that I'm a proud alum of The Ohio State University. And so I'm not some Ohio State hater on here coming on the air, but this is why I call the show The Right Side, because I tell the truth, or at least as I see it. And here's why I think, even though they're going to make it now, in all likelihood, because when the last ratings came out this past Tuesday, Ohio State was rated number 5 after the shellacking that they took from the Wolverines last week in Columbus. They dropped from 2 to 5. with the knowledge that if USC lost, that barring some unforeseen circumstances, that they would move up from 5 to at least the top 4. Well, for those of you that don't know, USC played Utah last night in the Pac-12 championship game, and Utah just steamrolled them. They beat USC 47-24 last night. So that basically put an end to USC's hopes to go to the college football playoffs, and as they were ranked number 4, in all likelihood, Ohio State is going to move up from 5 to 4 on tomorrow when the new rankings are put out. All right. Now, here's why, though I believe, it's my opinion, that despite what happened, that Ohio State does not belong in the playoffs. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback and disagreement on that. Well, that's good. That makes for good talk here. And by the way, Kansas State beat TCU today, 31-28 in the Big 12 championship game. So that opens another door up. Here's why. Okay, so Ohio State going into last week's game against their our rivals, the Wolverines from Ann Arbor, were the number 2 rated team in the country. The whole season, all they talked about was how embarrassed they were by their loss 42-27 in 2021 up in Ann Arbor, and how they dedicated this entire season to avenge that loss and return to win the Big Ten championship and get back into the college football playoffs. They even hired a new defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, who they brought over from Oklahoma State University to revamp the defense, because the defense got pushed around last year, not only in the game against the Wolverines, but also against Oregon, and to an extent, too, in the Rose Bowl against Utah, even though they pulled that game out. So they did all of that. They went through the regular season. They beat Notre Dame in the first week of the season when Notre Dame was rated number 5. They went to Penn State and won there, and basically rolled through the Big Ten, which the Big Ten was weak. Terrible conference. Just be honest with you. The Big Ten, especially the Big Ten West, horrible. I called it the Big Ten worst. And actually, even in the East, Penn State was ranked this past week in the top 10, but really, Penn State in their 2 signatures games against the Wolverines and against the Buckeyes got beat by double-digit figures in both games. So really, how good was Penn State? But fine, that's fine. They were rated, and they will finish, in all likelihood, in the top 10 in rankings. So they had that. So they come into the game last week. Now, last week, they played this game. The game is in Columbus. Mind you, as I said, the whole build-up all year was we're going to avenge the loss from last year. That was a fluke. We've revamped the defense. We've done all of these things in order to avenge that loss and beat the team up north, yada, yada, yada. So what happens? Well, first of all, the Wolverines' best player, Blake Corum, Heisman Trophy candidate, only plays 3 plays the whole game because he was injured the week before, 2 weeks ago today against Illinois. The whole Wolverine offense for the entire season was predicated upon their run game. So what do they do last week? They come out. They hit Ohio State with big play after big play. 65-yard touchdown pass, 75-yard touchdown pass, 70-yard run, 80-yard run. Halftime, the score is 20-17 Ohio State at half. In the second half, the Wolverines outscored them 28-3, basically by playing smash mouth football, 80-yard run and a 70-yard touchdown run untouched. Big play after big play, out scheming them, out coaching them, out everything them, out physically out physically them, out toughing them. And not only did Ohio State not avenge the loss, but they got beat worse last week in their own house than they did the previous year up in Ann Arbor. And one of the Wolverine players was seen mouthing on the sidelines, "They are who we thought they were," meaning that they were soft. And you know what? I agree with it. Ohio State has 14 five-star recruit players on their team. Now, for those of you who don't understand, there's a ranking system of high school football players coming out of high school. Five-star is the top of the top. The only team that has more five-star players on their roster is Georgia. They've got 15. Ohio State has 14. They have the second most amount of, quote, blue chip, unquote, prospects on their team. Recruits, rather, on their team. Second again, only to Georgia. More than Alabama. In comparison, the Wolverines had 4. So you look at this. This is not Jeff Doggett saying this. This is those who put these rankings out here of these high school players coming out of high school going to college football. You look at the fact that Ohio State has the second best roster in all of college football, has 3 times the amount of, quote, five-star players as their arch rivals do, have the game in their own house, perfect weather conditions, conducive to the type of offense that Ohio State runs, and yet they were stymied on offense and once again bullied on the defensive side of the ball by the Wolverines' offensive line. Not to mention the fact that J.J. McCarthy, the Wolverines' sophomore quarterback, thoroughly outplayed the Buckeyes' once Heisman Trophy candidate, C.J. Stroud, in the biggest game of the year. So not only did they lose, but they lost worse than they did the previous year. And not only did they lose worse than they lost the previous year, but they lost at home, where weather could not be blamed like it was in 2021. When the surprise effect, if you will, was not a factor. And this was a game that you pointed to all year. So there is no way that you can convince me that a team that supposedly has all this talent, playing in perfect conditions, playing at home, lost, and not only lost, but got blown out, got embarrassed in their own building by 22 points to a team that they have more talent than. That, as I said, they were playing at home where they had all the motivating factors, and yet not only do you lose, you get blown out. So why is that? Why did that happen? Well, it's one of 2 reasons, folks. It's either A, that this talent that they have is overrated, that the experts are wrong, and, to be fair, not every 5-star recruit pans out. But you know what? That doesn't just happen at Ohio State. That happens at Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, et cetera, et cetera. Not every one of those big recruits do pan out. But you figure if you get enough of them, some of them will. And mind you, they had 14. So either this talent was overrated, which means these experts whose job it is to evaluate this talent coming out of high school, they were all wrong, or it's a coaching issue. I lean more towards the coaching issue, but, and this is part of coaching though, there's a toughness that's missing. Because if Ohio State was mentally tough, or if Ohio State was a physically tough team, they may have still lost the game, though I doubt it. But there's no way that a team, especially their arch rival, to a game, as you said all season, you have been pointing towards this game all year, at your own place, would have come in there and punked you the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did. They came into your house basically and gangster slapped you on national television.
They did. They absolutely did.
And then after the game, we hear Ryan Day talking about, well, you know, we hung with them and, you know, it kind of got away from us at the end. Yeah, no, it didn't kind of get away from you. You got blown out. You got outscored 28-3 in the second half, Ryan. Get to him more on him in a minute. And then he said that he still thinks that his team has a legitimate shot at going to the playoffs because of their body of work. And they're still, in his opinion, one of the best teams in the country. My question is, who did you really beat? Notre Dame? You talking about Notre Dame that lost to Marshall and Stanford? Penn State? Okay. I already told you about Penn State. You beat them by 10. The Wolverines beat them by 24. After that, they played the Iowas and the Rutgers and the Indianas and the Michigan States of the world, which mean they didn't play anybody. And they're non-conference. They played Auburn in the year that Auburn is a down program. But they're rated in the top 10, so I'll give you that. Question is, though, Ryan, why weren't they better prepared to play? Now, I will put some of this on the players because the secondary is not up to Ohio State standards. Example, the day before Thanksgiving on the Big Ten Network, they were showing the game from 2017 that was played in Ann Arbor. And Ohio State won that game 31-20. And when I looked at the roster, looked at some of those players that were out on the field for Ohio State, they had Denzel Ward, they had Damon Arnett, they had Jordan Fuller, all in the secondary. What do those guys have in common? They all play in the NFL. Ohio State, in my opinion, does not have one. They have no NFL talent in their defensive secondary right now. Their defensive secondary was weak all year. It just got exposed last week. Then when I looked at that game, on their defensive line, they had Sam Hubbard. They had Nick Bosa. They had Draymond Jones. And they had a freshman by the name of Chase Young. You know what all those guys have in common? Sam Hubbard starts for the Cincinnati Bengals. Draymond Jones starts for the Denver Broncos. Nick Bosa starts on what may be the best defensive team in the league, the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, and then Chase Young, you know about him, how dominant he is when he's healthy. They also had Jerome Baker playing linebacker, starting for the Miami Dolphins. I don't see that level of talent on this. There is, in my opinion, there is no NFL level talent in the secondary. There may be on the line with Zach Harrison, who will probably be a third round at highest draft pick this coming spring. And Tua Tagovailoa, who is a sophomore now, he has one more year and still has a chance to develop. So they don't have the same level of talent that I can see that they've had in the past defensively. However, there is no excuse for you to be beaten the way you were, to be out-toughed the way you did, the way the Wolverines did, the way they just pushed you around. They just 2 years in a row, they just pushed you around. In other words, Buckeyes, I don't believe you should be in the playoffs because you're soft. Now, you're going to get in, especially with TCU and Southern Cal losing. You're probably going to be the 4 seed unless the committee decides to put a 2-loss Alabama team, because now this is really kind of screwed up the whole Final Four, if you will. USC's out. They've got 2 losses. TCU been hanging on a thread all year. They've got 1 loss. They're not a conference champion. So they may be out. Clemson's out despite what they do tonight. Who cares in the ACC championship game? Has no ramifications as far as the playoffs are concerned because Clemson has 2 losses. SEC championship game, LSU has 3 losses. So even if they upset Georgia today, are they really going to let a 3-loss LSU team in there? I doubt it. So this field is wide open now. So Ohio State, you got in. Yay. Nah. Okay, Ryan Day, now you got another chance. You got a chance of redemption because if you're number 4 and Georgia wins today, they'll be number 1. Guess who you get in the playoff game? You get the defending national champion, Georgia Bulldogs.
My goodness.
So here's a chance for redemption, Ryan Day. Here's a chance to show that your team will not be bullied. Or, if the committee does this, now the TCU is lost, and they put a 2-loss Alabama team in there at number 4 and move you to number 3, guess who you then get to play? Assuming that Georgia beats LSU today, that is. That's right, you get a rematch with the Wolverines. Because they're going to steamroll Purdue tonight. That's not even going to be worth watching. So there you go, Mr. Day, because let me tell you something, sir. Your seat is very warm down there in Columbus right now. You cannot continue to lose to your arch rival and especially get blown out and get out-toughed and get out-coached by Coach Khaki Pants. Jim Harbaugh.
Right.
2 years in a row.
Right.
When we look at your track record, somebody said, well, who you do with Ryan Day? Do you know who he is? Okay, let's look at who he is. 2019, they won the Big Ten championship, went to the college football playoffs, and lost to Clemson in a very close game that may or may not have been taken from them by the referees, okay? The following year was a COVID year. I'm going to throw that year out, but you did get to the championship game where you got steamrolled by Alabama. All right? Then the next year, 2021, you didn't make the playoffs. You lost 2 games. You lost to Oregon at home, and you got gangster slapped up in Ann Arbor. So you sat at home and watched them, being your arch rivals, win the Big Ten championship and go to the playoffs, and you hung on to beat Utah in a shootout in the Rose Bowl. 2022, we've already just went over. So let's look at your track record. So since you've been there, you've got 2 Big Ten championships, 1 legit one. I'm not really counting 2020. That was the COVID year. They only played 6 games.
Yeah. But
you have 2 Big Ten championships. You have 1 playoff win. But you're 1-2 against your arch rival. So if you see them in the playoffs, which is a distinct possibility now that USC and TCU both have lost, if you see them in the playoffs, you better beat them. Because if you lose to them twice in the same year, and your record goes to 1-3, your seat is going to be so hot, you won't be able to sit down. So they're in the playoffs. I still stand by my premise that they don't deserve to be there, but they're going to be there. And it's going to be interesting to see who they get. When the final rankings come out at around 12 noon, 12:15 tomorrow afternoon, it's going to be very curious to see where they're seated and who's seated where. Because if now the TCU has lost, I would not be surprised. Because let's cut away all the BS and get to the truth and the facts of the matter, folks. The committee is all about the Benjamins. So think about what Final Four will draw the most eyeballs and get the biggest ratings. Think about it. Who has a national following that presently is not in the top four right now? That was not in the top four going into this weekend. What schools, two schools, that were not in the Final Four going into championship weekend, which started last night and ends today, have huge national followings? Of course, Alabama and Ohio State. So the committee, despite all the stuff that they say about getting the four best teams and all of that, this could not have worked out better for them. Because now they can legitimately put Alabama at 4 and Ohio State at 3 and have a Final Four of Georgia, the Wolverines, Ohio State, and Alabama. And so your playoff games on New Year's Eve would be Georgia versus Alabama and the Wolverines versus Ohio State. Think that would get a few ratings? Think there'd be some eyeballs on those two games? So don't be surprised if tomorrow the committee sets a precedent and they, for the first time ever in these college football playoff rankings, put a two-loss team in who didn't win their conference championship, didn't even play on championship weekend, but has the pedigree, the prestige, and the national following of Alabama. Don't be surprised if they put them in there. Because Alabama was 6. Ohio State was 5. 2 teams above both of them, the number 4 team, USC, and the number 3 team, TCU, they both lost. So there's your second chance, Ryan Day. What are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with it? Especially if it's a 2-3 matchup between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. I don't know if the committee's going to do that, because I don't know if they want to rank it that way to have them play in the semifinals, but you never know. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Very quickly, before we get to our Hero and Zero of the week, Tuesday is a very, very important day. Tuesday, December 6th is the date of the election for the runoff in the state of Georgia for the Senate seat between Raphael Warnock, the Democratic incumbent, and his challenger, Herschel Walker. All the big guns have been brought out. President Obama has been down to Georgia to campaign for Reverend Warnock. He said something very interesting. I love Obama. I don't know if you all saw this clip.
I did.
But Herschel Walker had, and I see why now when he's coming on television, they don't let him talk, that Lindsey Graham or Rick Scott or somebody is sitting next to him and they're doing all the talking. Which should really tell you something about them, what's going to happen if he would get in the Senate, should he win on Tuesday, God forbid. But Herschel Walker made a statement about watching a movie where he saw vampires. He said vampires are very cool people, but he said, I never knew this, that a werewolf was the only thing that can kill a vampire, and that he wanted to be a werewolf. Now, what that has to do with anything, somebody tell me, so I'll...
Please.
So President Obama was campaigning for Reverend Warnock the other day in Georgia, and he said that Herschel Walker was talking about issues that are concerning all Georgians, regarding vampires and werewolves. And he said, I must admit that I've debated that too, that's been a concern to me too. When I was 7, that was the line. I just loved it. So this election is going to be Tuesday. Early voting has been tremendously high, record level high. They were showing on various media outlets yesterday that in Fulton County and Cobb County and in Georgia, which is the Atlanta area, that lines were like they were if it were the actual election day, that they were 75 deep at times all throughout the day, that people have been turning out in record numbers to vote early. So those of you that are listening to us right now in the state of Georgia, if you have not voted already, when you go vote on Tuesday, please vote for Reverend Warnock. Herschel Walker is not fit to be a senator. He's not mentally fit. I'm not talking about him. Trust me, folks. Hear me. I'm not talking about him. I'm not trying to make fun of him or anything like that. He is not mentally fit to be a senator. All you have to do is listen to what he says. He has no policy. He doesn't know how to legislate. He is unfit to be a member of a exclusive club where only 100 people can be a member of. There's only 100 out of 350 million people in this country. Only 100 people can qualify for that. And he does not meet the qualifications. The only reason why the Republicans ran well is that Donald Trump picked him. And the people in Georgia that voted in the Republican Party voted him their candidate over some people that were more qualified than him. But even the Republicans know he's not qualified. They just want him in there to rubber stamp whatever it is they want to do. Now, the Democrats already have control of the Senate. It's 50-50. Warnock holds on to this seat, though, it'll be 51-49, which means you no longer have to depend on Kristen Sinema or Joe Manchin if you need to pass something through reconciliation, like you've had to do this past year or so. But the Republicans know he's not qualified. That's why you see Lindsey Graham and Rick Scott and them sitting there propping him up, talking for him, because they know that he's not qualified. But they rather have a non-qualified opponent, Republican in there than a very qualified Democrat, because they don't care about the people of Georgia. All they care about is holding on to power. And that's so evident that even Stevie Wonder can see it. So those of you that are listening to us right now in the state of Georgia, if you have not done so already, when you go vote on Tuesday, please vote for Raphael Warnock, Senator from Georgia, and don't be discouraged. If you have to wait, go ahead and wait. It's worth the wait. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We're almost to the end of our program. We want to close out this week, as we do every week, by giving our hero and our zero of the week. Our hero of the week is New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who was elected this week as the minority leader in the House by the Democratic Party, which puts him in position to be the first black Speaker of the House should the Democrats take back control of the House in a couple of years. So this young man is from Brooklyn, is a congressman from New York, represents a district in Brooklyn. You are a hero of the week, Hakeem Jeffries. It's so ironic. Think about this. The first black president was named Barack. And when, notice I didn't say if, but when Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House, the first ever black Speaker of the House will be, their first name will be Hakeem. Let that sink in for a minute. So, Hakeem Jeffries, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from New York, You are our hero of the week. Our zero of the week is who we talked about in the first hour for obvious reasons, and that's Kanye, aka Ye West. You've been listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We come at you every Saturday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. here in the greatest location in the nation, on the greatest station in the nation. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time, and until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
Mm-hmm. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Right Side with your host, Jeff Doggett, here on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure don't bring the noise, NoStaticRadio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter No Static_radio. And let me make an announcement, as I will with all other shows, and I will post it on our social media sites. I don't know how far we're going to go with this Twitter thing, you guys. This might be the end of it at the end of this year, as it stands for No Static Radio. We cannot be a part of a whole extremely racist platform, and this station, not just who owns it, but this station, over time has always, pretty much since its inception, has been a part of the Twitter platform. But now, under the issues of ownership and what they allow and what they do themselves, I don't know how much longer we'll be a part of it. But for now, on the Twitter platform, we're at @NoStatic_radio. And on Instagram at @the_real_No Static Radio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on the platform, please check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio on the toolbar for replays of this show and all others on the platform. And for all things and for an uninterrupted listening experience, that means you don't have to refresh the page. There'll be a little buffering, but just sit back, relax, and wait for your next show to pop up on TuneIn.com, LiveOnlineRadio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the No Static Radio platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts, please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net, you guys. And thank you so much for joining us on this sensational Saturday. You know what it is. Stay warm, stay safe, love yourself, love others, stand for something or stand for nothing at all. Racism has no place in our lives. And for those that do, they need to go back into hiding, you guys. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And until then, we'll see you Monday, or you'll hear from us Monday with Wax on Sports and everything else with a special guest. So make sure you stay tuned. Once again, on this sensational Saturday, we'd like to thank you for watching and listening here on your voice of the revolution, NoStaticRadio.net, powered by Google, sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, designed exclusively and partnered with the Colors platform. Peace.